Hi listeners, Jason here. I'm excited to announce that the Psych Health and Safety Conference, PHSCon, will be returning in 2025. After a tremendous success this year, we're going even bigger and better. Taking place on June 19 and 20 at the ICC Sydney, this will be your chance to join the largest psychosocial safety community gathering. Featuring world-class speakers like Adam Grant, Marianne Baynton and Rob Briner, and practical insights from industry case studies. The conference content is all about leveling up your ability to create work that is better for worker mental health and better for business. Whether you're in people and culture, health and safety, psychology or leadership, this 2-day event and optional pre-conference masterclasses is your opportunity to learn, network and grow. Don't miss out. Super early bird tickets on sale now at phscon.com. Now, on to this episode.
From Flourish DX, this is the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. With workplace mental health becoming a safety prerogative, this is the source of information on psychological injury prevention and health promotion.
Hi, and welcome to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. My name is Jason Van Schie, and I'm one of the hosts of the show. The aim of the podcast is to rapidly increase the knowledge and application of psychological health and safety in workplaces worldwide. To help with this, we have regular guests from around the world who are leading the way in this important area. But before I introduce our guest and topic for today, allow me to introduce my co-host, Joelle Mitchell. How are you today, Joelle?
I'm tired.
But you know what? This is the last podcast recording we have to do this year.
It is.
Oh, unless we do the recap
No, we
one.
need to do a recap. Second last.
Second last. Sorry to be preemptive there. Only one more to go after this one.
Believe it or not, Jason, the podcast effort is not the biggest thing on my list that's causing me to feel tired.
God, aren't we in slowdown mode now? We had Melbourne Cup this week, and
last year was anything to go by, no, we're not in slowdown.
Yeah. In case people are listening to this in the past, we just found out that Donald Trump is the 47th president of the United States.
We did, yep.
Yeah, interesting. Bold choice, you could say.
There's lots that one could say.
Okay, we'll keep it. We won't be like Albo and say anything that we might regret.
Did he say something? I try not to read the news mostly because
I've
got enough on my mind.
I just saw a clip. I'm sure we'll get back to Trump at some point, though. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but interesting times, right?
Certainly interesting times.
Yeah, but not enough to keep you awake. Energized? You said you're tired.
Yeah, that's probably because I am keeping awake and not sleeping enough.
This is the issue. You're not a napper.
I'm not a napper, no.
Napping is great.
Well, and I just, when would I nap?
We're going to nap couch at work.
Yeah, but when in my day could I nap?
Well, instead of eating lunch, you could nap.
And then I'd be hangry. You don't want me hangry. Trust me. You don't want me hangry.
I've seen you hangry. I don't. Yeah. No. We prefer you to be fully fed and well slept.
Well, I also like those things, but yeah.
Well, as long as you're not both sleep deprived and hangry.
No.
All right, cool. Well, look, enough about sleep deprivation, US politics, and Australian politics, and other things.
Yeah.
We should introduce our guest in.
Excellent.
Yeah, we covered a lot in a couple of minutes.
We sure did. It was a wild ride.
So let's introduce our guest. She is a physiotherapist working in academia with an interest in proactive support rather than therapy. She is a PhD candidate, fellow of the Higher Education Academy, and lecturer at the University of Queensland. A warm welcome to the podcast, Lauren Cox.
Hello, thanks for having me.
No, great to have you on. We just did a webinar actually earlier today, Joelle and myself, and we hear it's quite muggy in Queensland. Is that the case for you?
That is absolutely correct. I am well conditioned in the air conditioner here. I don't think I'd be doing it outside.
Yeah, well, good. I'm glad you're comfortable because we're going to sit in. This is a long format podcast, and we're probably going to spend at least half an hour talking about the topic today, which we're interested to get into.
Sounds great.
So, Lauren, before we get into the topic, what podcast do you like to listen to?
Great question. To be honest, I'll listen to the Imperfects podcast as my go-to. I love that it's actually, basically normalizes human experiences, which is quite refreshing these days. That idea of just being open and vulnerable. They get experts in the field. And of course, your podcast, the Psych Health and Safety podcast. Working in the area, I find it really great listening to people from different industries and what's being applied. So, and it's great that you guys do it in a very conversational format. It's a lot more palatable than the academia space that I tend to be in.
Well, that's what we aim to do, right? Bring a lot of different views and angles, and in a way that's accessible for a wide audience. So
Yeah. So Lauren, sounds like you're a long-time listener, first-time caller.
Indeed, absolutely. It's good to be here today, actually.
Yeah. We'll have you anytime. Yeah.
Can you tell us about your professional career, please?
Yeah, as you mentioned, I'm actually a physiotherapist by background. I've worked in the space as a clinician for over 10 years, but probably in the last 5 years, I started moving more towards academia, so higher education. And that kind of came on the back of the fact that I'd moved in my physio career into a space where we were doing a lot more staff development and training. And I was like, actually, this is more my gig. This is where I find more joy. So I was like, how can I do it full time? And obviously paved the pathway in that direction. And actually around the same time, I actually started getting more interested rather than the therapeutic space. Obviously, that's what we do in physiotherapy, but more, what can we do outside of therapy in terms of being more proactive? And that's where I started making trends towards mental health and well-being and what can we do more in that space. So yeah, I feel like I'm a bit of jack of all trades, or I wear many hats these days, but mental health is definitely at the center of everything I do.
Yeah, and we do see that a similar pathway in a lot of professionals who've started working in more of the sort of treatment and recovery side of the picture and have that realization that actually they could probably have more impact if they were working upstream in more of a prevention space.
Absolutely. And I feel like there's a lot of, skills that, clinicians bring in, that kind of biopsychosocial approach that you can kind of apply in these different areas. So yeah, it's great to be, like I said, in the front end rather than the back end.
Yeah. And again, it's great. Case in point where you don't need to be an organizational psychologist to go into the field. So, we are very welcoming of people from various disciplines who have got something to contribute. So, no, that's great. So tell us, Lauren, you're working in academia. So what is your main area of research at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. And I probably should have brought that up in terms of background. But obviously, I'm doing doctoral research in the mental health and wellbeing space, specifically in academic staff, which is obviously a very captive audience in the area that I'm working. And we've seen, and we'll probably touch on this a little bit later, but we've seen a huge shift in the higher education or university environment into more of an agile workforce. So my research is specifically around those that are in the casual workspace and solutions. So what can we do about it? So it's quite nuanced in terms of research, but it's a fun space to get more evidence in.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that idea of the captured audience or the captured participants. I remember there was a lot of honours theses and master's theses back in the day written on university students because they were just there. And so you don't have to go far to reach your participants in your research.
Yeah, well, isn't that how most norm groups are established for validated tools as well?
Yeah, it's easy, right? Convenience. So yeah, we are still trying to get, and we're going to obviously unpack your kind of research around mental health in higher education. There was a really great study done on psychosocial safety climate by Dollard and others in academia that we would love to have Maureen on. Maureen, if you're listening, please call us up. We're still waiting. So yeah, we'll have her on eventually. It's another one. We managed to get Adam Grant. We're recording with him at PHS Con. I'm sure we can get Maureen Dollar. Come, Maureen.
Well, yeah, we might just have to get her to do a recording with us at PHS Con 26.
Might be the most convenient way to do it if we're talking about a captured audience. So, yeah.
All right, so enough about Maureen. Lauren, so I think Tim Bednall initially introduced us, and I think that he'd seen you giving a talk on your topic. I think it was in Europe, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah. So he suggested that that you would be a good guest to for us to interview today. Um, so the topic was looking into psychosocial risks in academia. What were the drivers for you to choose this as a research topic?
Yeah, obviously having been in the environment for a period of time, I could see obviously the impact of stress-mediated harm or psychosocial risks in the environment, and a lot of colleagues actually exiting the workforce. So I was kind of in a space of, what can we do about it? And obviously the best language in a university environment is to get research backing behind it. So that definitely paved the way. And, the idea of potentially this research having more of a ripple effect in terms of creating change in the mental health environment for the university space. The second driver for me, I guess personally, is that I've seen the impact of psychosocial risks in family members in terms of them having to exit the workforce. So I was curious about ways in which we could be more proactive. And we obviously know there can be harm coming through work from these psychosocial risk factors, but workplace environments could actually be positive for mental health, pending the environment, of course. So it was quite twofold for me in terms of trying to get evidence and make a difference.
Yeah, so what you're seeing in your profession, and then your lived experience of having family and friends who have had those adverse outcomes. Yeah, good drivers.
Yeah, and it's you can see people leaving the industry. That's for sure. I mean, we poached two of our psychologists. Well, they were leaving anyway. Let's say we weren't poaching them, but they told us they were leaving the higher education industry, and we're looking for consulting jobs. So we've actually picked up a couple of people who are disgruntled, I guess, with the exposures and not being able to do anything about it in that industry. So definitely, definitely something close to home for us at Flourish. So with your research, tell us a bit about your methodology then.
Yeah, so obviously with all research spaces, it's trying to work out what's currently out there. So doing a literature review is part of that, which is the work that I presented overseas. So really looking at, what is happening in higher education environment. And obviously when looking at the literature, we can see that it is in a mental health crisis from that perspective. So knowing that and seeing the landscape of the environment, it is then looking, okay, what can we do about it? So that's where the solutions came in, and talking to people is actually the best way, kind of getting that lived experiences, all the voices of people on the ground. So that's definitely part of the methodology. So looking at semi-structured interviews in terms of qualitative research, getting that come through, and interestingly, autoethnography, which is quite a mouthful, but it is just the lived experience as I am in the academic environment myself, in that kind of immersed lived experience, using that as a research methodology and approach, which was actually quite novel, writing in first person. A variety, and the idea is to pave the pathway using voices to therefore come up with more co-design of solutions in the future.
Yeah. So how many semi-structured interviews did you do?
Yeah, so today we've captured a small cohort of 15 just to start with, to get more the lived experience specifically of casualised academics, so those in temporary or casual positions. And then we're also getting from the other side, which is supervisors and their view. So basically asking them, what do they think as solutions to this problem, because we know it is problem. What are the recommendations and what can we do about it? And we know the importance of co-design. So this is, I guess, a research approach in which we are gathering the views to start.
Yeah. And did you have any hypotheses that you're testing as part of this? I know it's early stages in terms of the overall research, but going into the initial stage of this, qualitative exploration, was there anything in particular you're hoping to find?
Yeah, it was to look for themes around what are there themes and recommendations? So, and we'll touch on obviously solutions when we talk a bit later. But is it at an individual level that people think change should be made? Is it at a team or supervisory or organisational level? So it's touching on what are the areas that health initiatives could be implemented at, and what would they look like? So it was asking that from people on the ground.
Yeah, and was the sample all from University of Queensland?
At this stage, we are looking to broaden, to be multi-site, and obviously there's strengths and risks of having only one site. The idea is that in this stage we're getting the nuances of experiences happening in a local environment. We know this is an international problem, so it's locally what can we do to tailor the health initiatives to the nuances of stress experienced in local areas, and then long term, can that actually create change in higher education more broadly?
Yeah, well, every research area has to start somewhere, right? So it's easier to start where it's more convenient and then broaden, like you say, afterwards. So it makes sense with where you're at the moment.
Absolutely, and it's nice to focus on the solutions element. I think we are very well aware that there's a challenge in this space, and there's only really preliminary research in the space of solutions. So it's nice to, starting to pave the pathway to what that might look like.
Do you need more psych health and safety in your life? Then head over to the FlourishDX Academy for several free on-demand e-learning courses. If you're an internal professional, follow FlourishDX on Eventbrite to register for any of our free fortnightly interactive webinars. Our flagship professional practice program is also exclusively available for internal professionals. The 12-week course blends theory, applied practice, and interaction with other professionals through live lectures and a monthly community of practice session. Find out more about all these learning opportunities or inquire about a bespoke in-house training at the FlourishDX Academy. www.45003.org. Now back to this episode.
So what have your findings so far?
Yeah, it's very early days in terms of the thematic analysis, but it's really interesting to see that from, sometimes we think that rapid or, broad brush changes need to be made, things like at an organizational level. Work design or workload reduction and things is actually not specifically what's coming through from the precarious or casualized workforce. So it's actually simple things like, being able to access the environment, or being able to, get a workspace. That's, even hot desking isn't a situation that's available to this workforce. And then it's also obviously being temporary or casual in nature. We're also seeing that, things around supervisory support isn't always there. Obviously, there's lots of pressures in the environment, but even having, professional development or feedback and those kind of things, which, we kind of all feel should be present in a job, isn't always there as a protective, factor and for career development and progress over time. So we're seeing these come through, and that if present would actually improve their experience in terms of being part of the team, being supported by a supervisor, that sense of belonging. So, these things in terms of solutions don't necessarily always need to be big to start with. They can be small incremental changes that can actually create more psychologically safe environments for employees.
Are you seeing any differences between people who are looking specifically for casual work versus people who are kept in casual work over a very long period of time, which has, we've been, seeing more coverage of that in academia, where people have been on casual contracts for years, sometimes decades, and not being able to be given that security of permanent work. Do you have you seen any differences in sort of in that demographic?
Yeah, really great question. Because you're right, there is a group that, over years and years and years have been kind of in these temporary contracts or casual positions. And from the research in Australia, we are seeing, 60 to 80% of staff delivering undergraduate degrees are in temporary contracts. So there is absolutely a group or demographic within the casual workforce that are those that do want ongoing work, to be secure in the academic environment and continuing to do teaching and research. So there's definitely that, which seems to be the group that potentially more affected by, the psychological or psychosocial risks versus those that choose to be in the casual position, in the sense of there's always that flip side with casual work, isn't it? It's that there's no job security and that kind of, on and off nature of the work at times versus the ability to choose when you want to work or not want to work. And there's definitely a scope for those that do choose to be in casual work because, maybe they're trending towards retirement. They've been a subject expert in their chosen field for a period of time and just want to kind of do this on the side as they trend towards retirement, or those that, are in a family and actually that idea that they can choose when they want to take on more marking, for example, or not, works for them. So it's good to actually understand the nuances of those in the casual workforce, and actually could we identify a group that is more effective and therefore have more supports in place for them.
Yeah. And so have you, recognising that it's a small cohort so far, have you been able to look at differences between those two groups currently or not so much yet?
Not yet. Obviously, we're looking at voices alone at this point. It's good to get curious about it, and when we think about more larger studies, could we capture those in this kind of academic pathway in the hope that they're hoping to get academic positions, and maybe drill down to them specifically. But no, at this point we haven't been able to, and obviously our sample size limits the ability to do that.
And are you currently recruiting more for more participants?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, as the research continues to unfold, we will be doing larger multi-site, national type studies. May not more, rather than qualitative, we'll move more towards quantitative research. But absolutely, yeah, so that we can get more of a broader view.
And are you, so like if we've got probably listeners who are in academia, would you be happy for them to reach out and express interest in participating?
Absolutely. Yeah, we obviously, it's the more the collaborative work we can do in this space, the better. So absolutely, if listeners are doing work, I'd love to have a chat, or if they want to be involved in future studies as either a participant or collaborative research, it's always great to work in this space.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Well, obviously, it's a research area that has a lot of need. I guess, like you say, it's not just something that's relevant to your university, but it is a global issue that needs to be addressed. So, what action would you love to see as a result of your research?
Yeah, it's like I said, this is really focused on solutions, and it's really great that universities are creating pathways towards change in the solutions space, but it's really making sure that it's tailored to the environment and that we can actually have a ripple effect. That idea, yes, we're very local right now, but actually how can we broaden that to be more transferable across multiple environments? And co-design is one part of it, and we're building the evidence around the co-design piece in terms of asking people for their input and then using that information to make sure that the interventions themselves are targeted towards the challenges at hand.
Yeah, very much needed. And yeah, it'd be interesting to see how quickly you can do it, because academia doesn't typically work so fast. But yeah, it'd be great to see that scale up. Is there any way that people can get in touch with you regarding your research, and if they want to help you to, I guess, speed up how quickly you're doing things?
Absolutely. It's always nice to fast-pace things in our world. I'm on LinkedIn, so that's probably the easiest way to connect. I know I'm connected with you guys on there as well. So yeah, absolutely. Connect and swing a message if they're interested. And fast tracking is definitely one way, but obviously more people doing the work, the better.
Yeah, terrific. So, look, at this point in the podcast, Lauren, we like to ask all our guests the same question, and that is, what are your hopes for the future of workplace mental health?
Yeah, I think for me, obviously part of the research is where we're getting voices, and in terms of people experience or their lived experience. So my hope is actually that we start normalizing these types of conversations. I think, it's important to do, psychosocial risk assessments and understanding what the challenges are, but also normalizing, the fact that once we have information, trending towards solutions takes some courage from organisation and people on the ground, and at times it doesn't look perfect. It's kind of this idea of embracing the messiness that comes with implementing health interventions and solutions, and adapting them over time in that co-design piece. So that kind of idea that normalizing that's all part of it, and that the more that we can have these conversations, the better, because I feel at times we tend to get pending, I guess, who you're talking to, it's not a gritty conversation at all in this podcast, but it can be this uncomfortable conversation for people to have around mental health, which I find so curious, because working as a physiotherapist, we're so quick to speak about, our physical health and what we're doing at the gym, or, have we gone for a walk, or, what I'm eating and the fad diet. But that doesn't always come through when we think about mental health in terms of like, what are we doing for that? So it would be great to be at some point in which those conversations are just normalized.
Yeah, and it'd be great for people like yourself who've worked more in the physical health space to be able to bring some of that normalization, so we can talk about mental health in the same vein, for sure.
Without people just trying to get free therapy, I guess, which I would expect is a problem for physiotherapists. Where if you tell someone that that's what you do, they're like, "Oh, I've got this really sore neck. What do you think I could do about it?"
Did you know that T's a physiotherapist
I
by
did
trade?
know that,
Yeah. She doesn't tell people deliberately for that reason. Yeah. Can you just see what's wrong with this? Can you give me a massage here?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no good. Do you have parting words of advice for listeners who are interested in working in the field of psychological health and safety?
Yeah, I think it's and just probably on the back of that idea, if you say something and then someone says I have a sore back if I'm a physio, I think it's helpful to kind of separate like mental health and mental illness. I feel like as a word in people's dialogue, when you say mental health, people kind of relate it synonymously with mental illness. So that idea that actually could we start creating a language in which when we're talking about health, it's, the mental health space is that we're all on it. We're like all on this mental health continuum. That idea that, at times we may be in crisis and it's tough, but on the other flip side of that continuum is thriving. And, can we continue to have strategies in which we continue to move towards thriving? And that's all levels of mental health. And there's no mental illness within that. Obviously, there can be interactive effects, but I think it's helpful as a general, when we're talking about mental health, that we understand that they're two separate things, mental health and mental illness. So not that was my parting word, but just more of a comment on the back of what you were saying, that may open up the conversation. But like I said, it's really making sure that at some point that we can get to a conversation where it's the same as we talk about physical health.
Yeah, it's one of the key concepts that we cover in any of our introductory training is that the mental health continuum. Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's a lot we can leverage from our understanding of physical health and apply to mental health, and that's largely what we do on this podcast. Like take health and safety kind of principles and apply it to, hey, this is how you deal with psychosocial hazards for the mental health outcomes that we want to achieve.
Yep.
Well, Lauren, it's been great having you on. Thanks to Dr. Tim from our team for making the introduction. We didn't get invited to Prague like Tim.
I know, rude, right?
Yeah, I know. Just Lauren and Tim just like holidaying it up.
La-di-da.
La-di-da. But no, we really appreciate your time, Lauren. We think it's such an important area. Onwards and upwards, and hopefully you do get that global impact that you like this research really deserves.
Absolutely. Thank you. And the reminder of Tim actually prompts me to probably just share if there is any listeners that are interested in the academic mental health space, that we've just released or published a book, literally called The Research Handbook of Academic Mental Health. I helped co-edit that alongside some very senior people in the field, Dr. Marissa Edwards, Angela Martin, who I think you've had on your podcast previously, and Neil Ashkenazi. So if listeners are interested, that is also available. I think perfect bedtime reading.
Yeah, Angie's a good friend of the show. We'll put that link to that book into the podcast notes for listeners who are interested in taking that on. But thanks again, listeners. That brings us to the end of this episode. Remember, we do record these over video when we have our guests on, and you'll be able to catch those videos on the Flourish DX YouTube channel. And we also take snippets, the best of the best bits of our conversations, and put them on the Flourish DX LinkedIn page. So make sure you follow along over there. Joelle and I and Lauren are on LinkedIn. So if you want to continue the conversation, hit us up. But on behalf of the team, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next episode.
You've been listening to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. To stay up to date with the latest on psychological injury prevention, follow Flourish DX on LinkedIn and subscribe to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast at www.psychealthandsafety.com.